we're all here to talk about the idea of free speech, especially in society today, and how different things play into the idea of free speech and different mentalities that are surrounding it. So my name is Nathan, or Nate, doesn't really matter. I'm a fifth-year student that was originally a history major, so I do have a little bit of a footing just in that aspect and seeing how things change over time, especially in the context of free speech and how that can shape mentalities throughout history. I'm also involved with Power Gamma, our peer health organization on campus, so I have pretty good footing in terms of seeing how first-year students have these free speech ideas and how they can get that out there.
I'm Chloe. I'm a senior studying strategic communications. I have been the communications director for the Ohio University College Democrats, and I'm passionate about this topic because I feel as though if you can't educate people freely and hold others accountable, then we're never going to be able to progress as a society.
Hi, my name is Olivia. I am a fourth-year student studying psychology, minoring in Spanish and sociology. I am the co-vice president of the Black Student Cultural Programming Board and a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. And my pronouns are she, her.
Hi everyone, my name is Michaela. I am a senior studying strategic communication. I'm currently the communication director for Ohio University College Republicans. And I think that free speech is super important because we need to all listen to each other when we speak on our opinions, because we all come from something different. We might not always understand each other, but if we don't have free speech, we never will.
So when it comes down to free speech on college campuses, what are some examples that you've seen even throughout the last really year, because we've had a lot of different things go on campus. So what are some other ways that you've seen students show their activism and free speech on campus?
In the recent summer months, there have been Black Lives Matter protests held on Court Street. And I love to see it. I support it fully, and I just love, even when Caitlin Bennett came, seeing the Athens and the Ohio community come together and showing their support for what they believe in. I think it made a very powerful statement, and it made me proud to be a student here.
Every once in a while, there's that one pretty religious guy that stands by Baker, and I'm always really proud of the Ohio community when it comes together and kind of fights back against some of the rather aggressive stances he takes.
So then when we have these different counter protests and stuff, that'll come up. So I'll go to the example that I forget who it was that said it, but for Black Lives Matter on Court Street, there was a counter protest that was All Lives Matter, and I think it was Blue Lives Matter that they were doing another day. And then I think within a half hour or something, a mass of students and other community members ended up marching through Court Street themselves and having a counter protest for Black Lives Matter. I mean, I think that those are just really powerful stances. We're having this community. And for the most part, at least in terms of that instance there was nothing aggressive about it. It was a very good demonstration on both parts where you have two conflicting ideas.
And I think that's super important because, to every opinion, there's a counter opinion. And regardless of what we think about that counter opinion, we do need to, try and respect it. And, one of the things I love about Athens and Ohio University is that it's a marketplace for ideas, and it's also a place where all of the students really, really respect the community.
Yeah, and I think that these really difficult conversations are more effective when they're discussed in a civil environment. I think it's really important to have discussions like this. Recently, there have been lots of hard discussions being had. The growth that I've had since coming to OU on social issues hasn't really taken place in the classroom. It's been able to happen because I have friends and peers who have been able to sit me down and discuss these hard topics with me.
If we don't have conversations with each other, we won't understand the large range that, can be had on, both sides.
Despite what your views are on different topics, I think as a person, as an individual, it is very important to research. And on your own, if you have to read a book about whatever the topic is that you're struggling to understand, if you need to reach out to others, if you have to do Google searches and all of that, educating yourself is also very important. And that does tie into having difficult conversations. So look up those arguments and look at the history behind, why people are feeling certain ways.
We live in an age now where we have access to all this information through online, through libraries. I mean, we have all these different outlets to be able to get knowledge. But I still feel like, although we have this capability, it's just as difficult to become educated fully in a subject like this. And the reason being is because you have so many different sources, and with those sources, that creates bias. So you're almost getting something, well, not almost getting, but you're getting something where you're always going to have one side be shown through one of those outlets. Being educated can look differently for two different sides of the coin.
I also think it's really important to be aware of like the echo chamber that we can sometimes find ourselves in. If you are only friends with, people who think a certain way and you're not friends with anybody that has opposing opinions, then like you're never going to, learn the way that other side thinks, and you're never going to be able to expand your viewpoint. And that's like super, super important, not just for, understanding these like super large political issues, but also for just understanding each other as people.
One thing that I've noticed is I will have friends of mine who will find out one of their really good friends has differing views politically or anything like that, and then they'll just cut them out. And I think that goes more into like cancel culture and everything like that. I think that that's a really big problem. And I know that there's a lot of people that I'm friends with who they feel comfortable sharing their political ideas with me, but they're uncomfortable having them be publicly known.
At least try to have a conversation, see why, they choose to support that topic. And if at the end of the day, your views don't align, that's okay. When it does come to these hard topics, people, like you said, do have the right to feel exactly how they feel. And a lot of them feel this way because of the different backgrounds that they come from. People search for what they want to search for that supports what they believe. They surround themselves with those kind of people who have their same beliefs. So in learning about new topics and having conversations, it is important to do research on confirmation bias as well.
Yeah, so I came into college as a bisexual atheist, and one of the women who lived down the hall from me was super conservative and religious at the time. And we actually became good friends, and we would have conversations often where we would challenge each other's views on political situations or religious situations. And I think that was really good for both of us to kind of understand, like to get out of our bubble, because I grew up in kind of a liberal environment, and she obviously did not. So kind of understanding each other's backgrounds and where we were coming from.
It's very humanizing when we actually talk to people that don't agree with us, because we so often get caught up in this left versus right, they're the enemy, we're the good guys, and I can't stand that. I really wish that was wasn't something that we have to consider.
For as far as students, incoming freshmen, I was a resident assistant for 2 years. So I believe students may run into times when their roommates, the people they're with every day, have very differing viewpoints. So my advice would be to really utilize your resident assistant. They're trained to be a moderator. They're trained to be non-biased.
If an issue doesn't affect you, and if it doesn't affect your civil liberties, but you want to have a really, really strong opinion on that, and that limits somebody's civil liberties, we really need to re-examine why we have those opinions, and maybe look at our own implicit biases.
Ultimately, the way to have these conversations is to just be open to hearing someone else's opinions, but you don't have to agree. You don't have to leave the conversation changing in any way. We can't be productive if we're just yelling at each other. Being able to communicate, to say your piece and to hear theirs, I think that's the best way to handle those situations, is to approach it as calmly as you possibly can. And that's difficult, especially when these topics revolve around identity-based issues. like sexuality, race, and gender. That's very hard, but understanding that you might not be able to change their opinions on situations is really important. But also being willing and educated to fight for your thoughts is important in a civil way.